Namaste. Welcome to the Festival of Bharat. I'm your host Kamal Madi Shetty, and you're tuned into season 4 of the Festival of Bharat. As I always say, we are a platform that believes in having open and frank conversations about Bharat with no holds barred. And today we are joined by a very special guest who's joining us from London, Khalid Umar ji. Khalid ji is a lawyer based in the UK and has multifaceted interests ranging from philosophy to psychology, social sciences, law, and most importantly, human rights. He is a very vocal advocate for freedom of speech as a universal right. It is my pleasure to welcome Khalid ji today at the Festival of Bharat. Namaste, Khalid ji. Welcome to the Festival of Bharat.
Namaste and a good morning, good afternoon from UK.
Thank you so much, Khalid ji, for joining us at the Festival of Bharat. Khalid ji, first of all, how are you? And I believe you're coming out of another lockdown in Britain. So how has all of that been?
Yeah, well, I'm fine, but replying the British conservative way, I would say that not too bad. So we are coming out of the lockdown. UK vaccination rate has been one of the fastest in the world, and more than 31 million people have been vaccinated so far. So yeah, in about 4 days from 12th, the major restrictions are being lifted, and all the non-essential shops and barbers like gyms and pubs are opening up. And yes, we are having more of the sun, and spring is also around the corner. And yes, so when I compare it with the rest of the Europe, yeah, I would say it's really good, and I am fine. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, Khalid ji. And like everyone else, I think we all hope that we get out of this situation very soon. Um, uh, Khalid ji, your Facebook musings are truly fascinating. And today, many of my questions are actually premised on them. And my first one to you is about your own journey. As a Muslim, what were some of the things that you were told in your childhood or even as you grew up about, let's say, the Hindus? And how did you sort of overcome that to sort of realign yourself with the thinking that you have, the thought process that you have?
Well, it's really interesting. In the late 70s, as a school-going child in Punjab province of Pakistan, what was taught in mosque and school curriculum was mainly about the superiority of the Islamic faith over everyone and everything. So the textbooks, I would say, contained Hindus are wicked people. Hindus has always been enemies of Islam, and the religion of the evil Hindus did not teach them good things. Hindus did not respect women. Hindu, worship fake gods. Their temples are narrow, dark, and dirty. Muslims ruled the Indian subcontinent for about 1,000 years with magnificence, but they did not forcibly convert a single Hindu, because if they had willed, then today there won't be even a trace of them in the subcontinent. So, such kind of things, like Muslims showed great tolerance, and they raised Hindus to high positions. And wherever the Hindus were in majority, they brutalized Muslims. And the sad part is that this exists in today's textbooks as well, with rather more venom. Because after the 70s, when General Zia came in, and then there was a more of Islamization of the country. So every aspect was Islamized. So the frightening and the funny thing to me is that even today, as most of the Pakistanis think, and they perceive and equate, and somehow they understand that these Hindus are the same people, or linked with the same people who were in Mecca during the Prophet Muhammad's time. So that jihadi narrative of animosity against kafirs gets turned towards Hindustan, and it gets kind of a religious and sacred backing. So the fight becomes between a Kafir army versus an Islam's army. So even today, this is the same thing which is being taught is in Islam and Islamic history from mullah military point of view and a jihadi perspective. Luckily, I was born to educated parents, and they were of the generation who had seen and lived and studied with Hindus. So, and I luckily escaped going to any mosque or any mullah or any madrasa. So we escaped all that indoctrination which happens in almost every Muslim home. So that gave me the opportunity to be a free thinker.
Absolutely, Khalid. That is very, very fascinating. And it actually leads me to my other question. And if we have to talk about today or even the past, we see, Khalidji, that Hindus have always gone out of their way to support the rights of our Muslim brothers and sisters. And one wonders why then are Hindus not given the same respect in return? And how do we correct this fundamental disrespect and lack of mutuality, if I can call it that?
Well, you said brothers and sisters. Yes, apparently it feels good calling Muslims as brothers and sisters, and ideally it should be in any educated and secular society. The problem is you can't clap with one hand. For a Hindu to call a Muslim a brother, the same sentiment must be reciprocated as well. So there are Indian citizens who are Muslims, who are culturally Muslims. That works fine with them. We have great names in history, in Indian art, culture, music, politics, government, sciences, literature. You can name hundreds of names, almost in every walk of life, who were Muslims, and they were great sons of the Indian soil. But the problem happens when uh, Muslims take their religious teachings of that 14th century, literally applicable today. For a practicing Muslim, the way he has been taught, it was not always there, but now we are talking about the ground reality, the situation now. For a practicing Muslim, a Hindu is not only a kafir, but a mushrik as well, which is according to their interpretation of Islam, is an unpardonable sin. So when I say interpretation, that matters. With the polytheists, a Muslim is not allowed to have any social relationships like marrying, socializing, eating food together, etc. So, so this way, uh, the way Islam is being interpreted, it cannot be secular, and that's why you, as a Hindu, will never get the same respect in return. Now we are talking about how the situation can be corrected. So I believe it can only come by stopping the radicalization. It is the home where it all starts, then madrasa and schools. So if I have to say in one word, I would say one country, one curriculum is the recipe of communal harmony and peace in India. India needs a uniform education code, one secular curriculum for all. I mean, it is appalling that there are 3,000 madrasas in the Indian capital, New Delhi alone, with over 360,000 young minds stuck in the curriculum, which was developed in the 1700s. You cannot dream to take the nation ahead with millions enrolled in over 600,000 madrasas countrywide. And then there are additionally 40 to 50 lakh mosques as well. And they have attached maktabs and madrasas as well. And Indian government has tried, but they have failed schemes in India to make madrasas education more inclusive of secular and science subjects. In 2009, I believe, 2009 and 10, Congress initiated a scheme which was called SPQEM to include science, maths, social studies, Hindi, and English in madrasas. It is still going on in 18 states in the country. And so far, over 21,000 madrasas have been given a huge funds, over 1,000 crores. Only in Uttar Pradesh, there are 1.82 million children in 8,584 madrasas, as per your government figures. So you can't teach science and mathematics and algebra, etc., and then with Islamic scripture. Because the core Islamic scripture, as being taught in madrasas, cannot be made secular and humanistic. So I would say this scheme initiated by the Congress is a loss of time and money and must be scrapped. Madrasas cannot be reformed because what they teach as the fundamental teachings and the modern secular education cannot coexist. You just tell me, would the students of the madrasa will trust science, which says that the earth is spherical and revolves around the sun, and or you would believe a Quran, the interpretation of Quran, which says that earth is flat and the sun sets in the murky waters of a lake? How can you teach them harmony and love when they would learn from Quran that all the idol worshippers are consigned to the eternal hellfire? So I would say that if you don't control mullah, mosque, and madrasa, then peace and communal harmony in India will remain a pipe dream. You cannot you have to control the avenues of indoctrination before you can think that in 20 to 30 years things will come to normal settings.
Absolutely, Khalidji. I think that is very insightful, and I think it is so important that the root causes are addressed rather than certain superficial or piecemeal sort
True.
of changes. Thank you for sharing that. Khalidji, it also leads me to some subjects that you have discussed previously, and that is namaz and azan. Now, you once wrote that holding namaz on the street was a form of it's actually a form of flaunting your superiority, be it numerical superiority or otherwise, and it's sort of like a warning of sorts for the other communities. It's like a land jihad of sorts.
Mhm.
Could you please explain the ideological thinking behind this? I mean, what is the psychology? I mean, behind literally blocking public spaces for namaz and also playing azan on loudspeaker, sometimes at very unearthly hours during the day.
Well, let me quote Erdogan first, the Turkish prime minister, and a dictator for over 20 years now. Um, he once quoted, and he said, the minarets are bayonets, the mosques are barracks, their domes are helmets, and the believers are soldiers. So this was basically a poem by a Turkish poet, which he read and adopted in around 1999. And he also once said that mosques in Europe, about mosques in Europe, he said the mosques in Europe are Trojan horses. So you understand the terminology of a Trojan horse. So first of all, about mosque, you need to understand that the mosque is not a place where you assemble to say your prayers only. It's a house of God with four walls, which is a powerful political institution, which is free from state control, which seeks to influence and transform the society at a grassroots level. So all the mosques are basically houses of Sharia law. They are houses of jihad and stand against everything which secularism stands for. So to me, a mosque is a country within a country. And the ground upon which the mosque has been built is now the conquered territory of Islam. It is no longer part of the country where it stands. You have seen this, animosity in the Ram and the fiasco, the case. Because let me repeat what I say is that when you walk by a mosque, be that in Mumbai or Europe or the United States or London or wherever, the land upon which the mosque is built, according to the Sharia law, is no longer part of that country. It is now becomes the God's house. It is the conquered territory of Islam. So mosque is basically a political institution, as I said. Muslims feel strong and safe within its four walls, and it is respected as well from any intrusions. So what happens is that the areas and the roads around the mosque become regions of special interest. So creating nuisance on roads and noise pollution basically discourages, especially the other communities, for example, in India, Hindus, to leave those properties and sell them off maybe cheaply to Muslim buyers. So it in a way helps in establishing Muslim population centers around the mosques. It's like, when a country gets strong economically and militarily, they start flexing their muscles, and especially, they show territorial ambitions. The same principle applies on mosques. It's a kind of a showing your territorial ambitions. And yeah, azan is proclaimed 5 times a day at quite odd times as well, loud and clear from every minaret of mosque in India, proclaiming that the Muslim God, Allah is the only God and Muhammad is the messenger, and that is the only way of truth and salvation. So we are used to its sounding, every day. I mean, if we taken literally the wording, it may be insulting for some other religions if we think deeply, but that's not the issue. At the moment, what I want to discuss is its impact on civic life. So it definitely is an annoyance, and it is an intrusion through sound. And the number of mosques and Muslims have multiplied, so with the living space getting more packed and in the urban centers. So we need to see why it is, if it is necessary today. Yeah, there was a time when you needed someone with a loud voice to sound this alarm, and then came the sound amplification systems, loudspeakers. And yeah, there was a time when you rode on horses and fought with swords. You don't do it any longer. So now, after loudspeakers, you have now much more reliable gadgets available. So if the purpose is as a call to prayer, you can have an app on your mobile phone to sound azan right in time, wherever you may be. So, and you have almost everyone will have a wristwatch, if not another watch. So I think that the Muslims community should now look at the alternatives, as the purpose for the azan is to call to prayer, and much more authentic and safe means of call to prayer, which are less intrusive as well, are available to everyone. I don't think that it is going to happen very soon, because this is something, again, the supremacist ideology which we are talking about. It's less to do with the call to prayer. I mean, you may be shocked that here in Britain now, in London and other big cities, certain mosques have been allowed to sound azan through loudspeakers. So it is happening. It started from last Ramadan, and now the Ramadan is again coming. So and they have again permitted them in and to sound the azan through loudspeakers. So it's not about azan. It's about fixation with their traditions, illogical fixation. I mean, if it is not any logical fixation, there's no logic for a newborn to be sounded azan right in his ears when he or she is born. It happens in even in the Western European hospitals, where if no one else is available, any Muslim doctor or a paramedic will come and volunteer that religious service. I mean, calling a child, newborn child, azan, call for prayer. Does it make any sense? So I would say that, yeah, technology is offering a very simple alternatives to azan, sounding azan on through loudspeakers. It is very important that there should be a debate among the Muslim diaspora, and they should consider it. Because I believe if the change is coming within the community rather than being implemented from the outside through executive orders or through the court orders. So it's best that that change will be permanent, and if it comes from inside, if it's not really implemented on you.
Absolutely, Khalidji. I think it is high time that there is some introspection on these issues. And like you said, I mean, it's so important to understand the larger issues associated with it. And thank you for sharing that perspective with us. Um, UK and Europe, if you look at it, if you look at the ordinary people, most people are still fundamentally clueless about Islamic expansionism and all of the things that happen behind the scenes in a way to expand their influence. So, could you please explain the tactics of these expansionary activities and how should the UK and Europe deal with this?
Well, the main tactic of expansion is obviously population explosion, which is coming through asylum, immigration, and then procreation. After immigration and asylum, then starts procreation. Now, I have seldom seen any Iraqi or Pakistani or Bangladeshi British marrying an ethnic boy or a girl. They invariably marry in their home country and bring in their cousins or near relatives. So for UK, there were 180,000 visas granted for all the family reasons in the year ending September 19, which was 23% more than in the previous years. And 20,000 were granted asylum in the UK figures. So you can imagine that the asylum system is only costing UK over 1.8 billion pounds a year, taxpayers' money. And there were more than 30,000 attempts to enter UK illegally in 2019 alone by all young adult and healthy males, as I said. So if I give you the example of the UK, which is the system I'm very familiar, once you make an application for asylum, then you are in for a long wait, at least a year at best. So at the moment, more than 100,000 cases are waiting for vetting. So even if you fail in your asylum claim, still it would be almost impossible to make you leave the country. Either your home country will not receive you, or there will be so many other reasons, like you have already formed a family, or have a girlfriend or boyfriend and living here and have a child, and etc. And then once you become illegal, then you will marry a girl in your home country, and then the cycle of growth will kickstart. So in all the Western European countries, the population growth is made possible due to net migration. The natural population growth has been rather in the negative. I mean, Germany has got 10.4 million non-nationals, non-EUs living in Germany. Spain, France, Italy each have about 5 million people. So 71% of the non-nationals live in these four countries. So this is how the is the tactic to what we call through asylum, immigration, and procreation, that the net population is increasing, and mostly they belong to a certain religion.
Absolutely, Khalidji. And because you're talking about the UK, two very well-known examples of creeping expansionism in the UK are Luton and Tower Hamlets. Could you please explain to us what exactly happened in these two areas? I mean, historically and even now. And also, I wanted to ask if Islamic expansionism in the UK, especially, does it tend to flourish under the Labour Party or the socialists in general?
Well, Tar Hamlets is a predominantly Bengali origin at the moment, and it is the London's most Muslim borough, followed by Newham, Redbridge, and Waltham Forest. They are around. So, because Islam is actually an intercity faith in London. The least Muslim boroughs are all on the outskirts of London. And when faith comes, it brings mosques. So this area we are talking about has got more than 40 mosques and Islamic centers, including the East London Mosque, which is Britain's biggest mosque, and we've been allowed to sound azan through the loudspeakers as well. So the history is that historically, this is the east end of London. That used to be a poor area with villages around the city walls and surrounded by farmlands, marshes, small communities around the river, which were because the Thames has got shipping, and so the Royal Navy needed people to work on the ships. So this was throughout the 17th to the 20th century. So the British East India Company employed thousands of South Asian sailors and workers on their ships, and who were mostly Sylheti Muslim from Bengal and Punjabi Sikhs, to working on these British ships. So the majority of the early Sylheti settlers, they were seamen. So they naturally settled in the areas which were cheap and which were poor, which they could afford. So the earliest Muslim communities were also formed in the port towns of the UK. Say the Navy's headquarters is in Portsmouth, you will find a huge Bengali diaspora here. So naval cooks and waiters also came. So then when they retired from the ships, so they stayed closer to where the ships used to land, and they started their Indian food restaurants. And so it spread so much that the majority of the Indian restaurants in the UK today are owned by Sylheti Bengali, Muslims. And Sylheti has been working in London restaurants at least, in the 19th century. At the beginning of the World War I, there were more than 51,000 seamen working on the British ships, and the majority of them were from Bengali descent, especially from Sylhet. So this is how the East End got an abundance of semi-skilled and skilled, unskilled labor to low wages and poor conditions throughout the West End. So then the situation was so bad. This brought the attention of the social reformers during the mid 18th century. And then unions got formed because they were workers. And Labor Party is basically a assembly of the unions, labor unions. So that's how the labor got strong in these areas. And then you know it's this is totally labor areas. I mean, out of the 44 I mean, out of the 45 councillors, 42 are labor, only two are conservative. So London is basically overall is a labor area, Labour Party's area.
Right. Um, I want to shift subject slightly, Khalidji, and go back to some of the previous discussion that we were having. And in that context, you had mentioned sometime about certain things being haram, and so I wanted to just ask you, what is the concept of this? We see that in India sometimes even greeting someone on Diwali or Christmas, or touching an elder's feet, or even I think showing skin in a cartoon, as once you had pointed out, uh, it could all be considered haram. So, could you explain this concept? What does it mean? And also, the other concept of halal.
Well, halal literally refers to anything that is considered permissible and lawful under the religion. And while haram is opposite to that, refers to everything which is forbidden and punishable according to the Islamic law. I mean, mostly we understand halal, that halal is associated with the word halal is understood to be associated with a variety of food which is allowed or which is not allowed on Islamic law. But the concept of halal actually covers much broader meanings, including your behavior, action, your speech, the way you talk, your attitude, your clothing, your cosmetics, medicine, even in banking, finance, hospitality, dating, etc. There are Muslim, especially halal dating sites even in the UK. I mean, Islam regulates every aspect of a Muslim's life. So it's you have to lead your life according within a very narrow constraints of what is allowed and what is not allowed. So the halal haram dichotomy almost always applies to everything, and the Muslims make sure that they understand what is halal and what is haram, because saying or doing anything halal will lead them to paradise and haram will take them to hell. So it's that fear that maintains that obedience to be according to halal and haram, because everything is looked from a very narrow angle, including the touching the feet, which may be seen by some hardliners as doing sajda, which is not allowed, to any humans according to the Islamic interpretation of faith. So, and say same thing, Diwali and all that, because socialization is something which is not permitted with polytheists, then obviously all your traditions and all your festivals fall into the same category of, I mean, haram, I would say.
Very, very fascinating, Khalidji, and I think that explains why there are so many. The list of things that are considered haram is really long, and
Yeah.
um, Khalidji, you have pointed out in the past that Muslims in India are actually better off under Prime Minister Modi and the Hindutva forces. Why do you say that? And you've also talked about Hindu Rashtra. So can you please share some light on that?
Well, I sincerely believe that the Indian Muslims need secularism, and a true kind of a secularism, not appeasement policies. And Modi's government has truly been secular, at least so far. And Muslims need to be secular. That is, if the country and they have to progress. If Muslims were secular, they would not be fighting with every other faith in all over the world. It's not about only about India. They fight with not with other faiths, but also among their own sects in their own nations. So in India, under Modi ji's governments, they may taste the real secularism now, I believe. The changes which are happened under the Modi government, they did not see much hostility compared to what would have been anticipated, given the past attitude of the Muslims. So we have seen incidents across the world. So the government has not done anything offensive to Muslims. Rather, they have shown brotherhood in all possible manners, be giving it acres of land to the loss of the Ram Mandir case recently, or selecting Padma Shri awardees from the deserving ones. So what I see is that the religion of the land of this 5,000 years or more old has been Hinduism. The Muslims have 53 countries where they are in majority, whereas 95% of the world's Hindus live in one country, that is India. So Hindus have a right to have their own country, or their own secular democratic Hindu Rashtra. I mean, many people doesn't know that England, I mean, UK has got 4 countries. So England is the major constituent country, and England is a officially Christian country. So if England as a officially Christian country can be a secular democracy, then why can't India be a Hindu Rashtra and a secular democratic country as well? So this is a simple demand, and I think it's justified. It should not be taken by Muslims as a scope to play victim card unnecessarily. I think if one more decade of current kind of a governance continues, it will set the things right as it should be. Implementation of the UCC from the government will set the things right, I believe, and the Muslims will have better vision towards spending their energy for more constructive things in life. Muslims are better off with Hinduism, which is a secular faith. All the faiths have flourished in India, including, Parsis, Jains, Sikhs, Muslims, Rashtrians, everyone. Hindus are not intolerant toward other religions. So Muslims are better, Muslims of India are better in India because they have a least religious hostility. There is no concept of any forced conversion in Hinduism. So Modi ji's secular governance is something which the Muslims of India really need, and it is in their total favor, I believe.
I also wanted to ask you, Dharma, or the worldview. If I could ask you, what made you go through, your own voluntary dharmapsi, if I may call it that.
Well, I find Hinduism to be intellectually and philosophically superior to the other faiths, especially Brahmanic faiths, and I have my reasons. So as a humanist, I love the approach of Sanatana Dharma. Hindus don't have to perform anything in particular to be a Hindu. So there is no political approach to the entire faith. Whatever way you live your life and make space for some religious practice at your own convenience is as much as okay as someone who dedicates many hours in practicing the faith. So there are no apostates, there are no blasphemy laws. I have seen many of my Hindu friends openly discussing for and against Lord Rama, and both remains Hindus still afterwards. So to me, it's very beautiful. I find the ideas of God more robust in Hinduism, as fragility has no space in here. I mean, as I read Ramayana and Mahabharata and other, mythological anecdotes, I observe that all the epic wars in those were between the good and the evil. So that is very fascinating. It's not between Hinduism and other faiths. So it is always between within them, but between good and the evil. So this is a very noble approach. The evil, so that happened that the evil that existed in Hinduism many thousand years back faded off with time. So they don't cling to anything as the final one. They seek more than what they believe. That's a way of life. They have given world a huge knowledge since many thousands of years. So how can one ignore what Hinduism offered to the world through the humanistic approach toward life? So it doesn't. What fascinates me is that it doesn't prosper on blind faith or coercion or blood of its adherents or others. Everywhere people believe they know God created man. Hindus say that man created God. So it's a godless religion. So the only faith in the history of human beings which gives freedom to choose your own God. It can be money, or it can be a rock, it can be a rock star, it can be wisdom, it can be a cow, a sun, or a Donald Trump, or your motherland. So, for someone familiar with the monotheistic faiths, understanding Hindu faith requires total paradigm shift. Because if I'm an Hindu, I have the total freedom to create whatever kind of a God I can relate to. Or I may choose not to believe in any God. And everybody can have their own way of worship. So that's very fascinating. Everything is firm and final in the Abrahamic religious scriptures. Nothing of sort here. So I mean, there's no such creator of the universe who loves me, but he will burn me in the eternal hellfire for not being obedient to his eternal message given in the holy books through a last and final messenger who lived 1,000 years or more than 1,000 years ago. You know, Hinduism tells me God is inside you. Isn't that enough for me to be an Hindu?
Absolutely, Khalidji. Very interesting and very beautifully you have summarized it. I think that gives a very beautiful message also. Finally, Khalidji, as a well-informed and a compassionate voice of reason, if I may ask you, what message would you give to Muslims, especially Muslims in India?
I think first a bit of background and a bit of soul searching. The planet's six of the poorest of the poor countries are countries with a Muslim majority. Muslims are world's 21% of the population, but their share in the world GDP is 5% of the world. So situation of Muslims in India is not different, in terms of GDP and 57 majority countries, Muslim majority countries have just less than 600 universities, I think 570 in all. And for 1.4 billion people in India has got 8,407 universities. So from within the 1.4 billion Muslims, Abdul Salam and Ahmad Zawel were the only two Muslims who won a Nobel Prize in physics and chemistry, and both studied overseas, one in Italy in the UK and the other in the USA. I mean, over the past 105 years, 1.4 billion Muslims have produced just 8 Nobel laureates, and Jews are just 14 million, and they have produced 167 Nobel laureates. The questions which the Muslims need to ask is why. And I would think because 60% of the world's Muslims cannot read and write. That's where the problem lies. So illiterates are subject to manipulation by the philosophy of ignorance and hatred. So what happens in those societies? Muslim societies religiously shun secularism. Scientific thought is superseded by dogma. Freedom of expression is just slaughtered at the altar of Holy Scripture, and any inquiry is culled by indoctrination. But my brothers, Muslims, brothers and sisters need to understand that it wasn't always like that in the Muslim societies. There is a period in Islamic history which is called the Golden Age of Islam, which was from 8th century to the 13th century until Mongols decimated it, during which most of the historically Islamic world was ruled by various caliphates, and science and economic development and cultural work flourished. That was the age when the Arab scholars saved old classical works by translating them into other languages. These Arabs assimilated scientific knowledge of the civilizations they had overrun, including ancient Greek, Roman, Persian, Chinese, Indian, Egyptian. The scientists advanced field of algebra, calculus, geometry, chemistry, biology, medicine, astronomy. Art forms flourished during those golden age, including ceramics, metalwork, textiles, woodwork, calligraphy, etc. That is, and they had a huge line of great philosophers and scientists, which are still, relished by their knowledge is relished by the West so far still. That is what we need to do it now, today. It is education, secularism, no blind faith, think and questioning and inquiry. So if that is something needed. I mean, when I was 10 years old, my father gave me a book which was a kind of an easy reader of Quran, which was in English and Urdu. So that contained lessons for how these Muslim scientists, artists, astronomers, philosophers understood the message of Quran. So, and there were, I have derived like 10 points which were derived from Quran, and that is my message to the Indian Muslims, brothers and sisters. And this can be taken as a secular message, this can be taken as a religious message or whatever. But is that first think and question. Whatever you hear, think and question. No God is going to punish you if you seek an answer. Don't support anything which curtails life. Don't believe in anything unless you understand it, even not God. Your action is needed to this world, look at you and your religion with respect. It is the Muslim's responsibility to act. They should practice religion in your private space. Don't do things which compels the world to see your Allah and your the messenger of with contempt or with hate. They should practice passion towards science, literature, music, arts, humanity, which they did in the golden age. And there is no bigger religion than humanity. Choose your teacher or your preacher carefully, then treat them with respect. Think of thriving as a human first. Compete in goodness and knowledge, and spread the universal love, and you will receive the same. That's the fundamental things which are actually for everyone, be that a Hindu, a Muslim, a Christian. These are the things which if they go back to their own book with a different mindset, they will find it, that this is what was picked up by those people, but those of their ancestors, and they become the golden age for more than 6 centuries, for 600 years. So that's I think all I can say and appeal actually.
Very well put, Khalidji. Thank you so much. It has been a very fascinating conversation. I think we have spoken about a wide variety of issues, I think from India to Europe and various different dimensions of life. And I'm really grateful for you for taking out time and joining us at the Festival of Bharat. It has been a thoroughly enriching conversation. Thank you so much, Khalidji.
Thank you so much for inviting me to speak.
Thank you, Khalidji. And to our viewers, I would like to request you, please do like, share, and subscribe to our videos. Continue supporting us, and we will be back with another such fascinating conversation. Until then, please take care. Namaste.
Namaste. We hope you enjoyed this Citti Media content. Please remember to subscribe to us and switch on the notifications for this channel. For our other social media links, more content, and to support our work, please visit citti.net. Dhanyavad. Namaskar.